Well, hello, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us this evening for our 2022 Community Health Education Series. Again, my name is Zavanya Covington, and I am the Community Partnership Coordinator for Faith-Based Partnerships and Senior Strategies for the Social Responsibility Department here at Baptist Health. Our topic tonight is mental health, and we have a very special guest speaker tonight who I will be introducing in just a moment. But first, I would like to go over just a few housekeeping items and the agenda as well. So in reviewing the agenda, I will be going over, again, a few housekeeping items. We will have the presentation by our speaker in addition to the Q&A. And finally, we will end with some brief closing announcements. So as far as the housekeeping items, as always, we are recording tonight's session and it will be made available to all of the registrants, not tomorrow, but later on this week. There are also arrangements that are made for us to for us to take attendance for tonight's session. So if you have invited someone to attend with you and they were not able to register, we first say thank you so much for spreading the word about tonight's session. And we just ask that if you don't mind adding their names to the chat so that we can document for our records. And thirdly, my director, Lynn Sherman, she will be monitoring the chat during the presentation. So please feel free to type in your questions there and they will be addressed during the Q&A segment. In addition, we will open the microphone. And so if you would like to ask your questions directly to our speaker, you will have an opportunity to do that as well. So without further ado, I would like to introduce our speaker for the evening. So Terenia Cross, affectionately known as Dr. Ty, is a licensed mental health counselor in the state of Florida. She has over 2 decades of experience and has served in various community agencies with emphasis in providing services to victims of domestic violence and their children, families in crisis, at-risk youth in foster care, and court advocacy for abused and neglected children. Dr. Ty has dedicated her life to understanding how the environment and relationships impact our thoughts, our feelings, emotional responses, and ideas to self. She has an integrated approach to therapy that is set to develop and increase the individual's insight and awareness. She also believes in a collaborative approach to psychotherapy. So Dr. Ty, thank you so much for joining us today. And when you're ready, you can go ahead and begin your presentation.
Good evening, and thank you so much for that introduction. And thank you all for joining us this evening. I would like to extend a personal welcome to each and every one of you. I hope that tonight you're able to learn something about yourself, learn something about your family, something that you can take with you from this point on. So again, thank you all for taking time out of your busy schedules to be with us this evening. This particular topic, or any topic surrounding mental health throughout the lifespan, is very important to me for a number of different reasons. From the time I was a small child, like many of you, I was exposed to situations like relationship conflicts in families, health crises and concerns, financial issues, death and loss, and the biggest one was inevitable change. And I'm still being exposed to these things even at this later stage of life. These issues have surrounded you and I, and will continue to surround us for the entirety of our lives. The sad part about those particular issues is that we struggle to have conversations surrounding the appropriate responses and ways to manage or cope with life on life's terms, which can actually lead to stress. This evening, we are going to have that conversation with a focus on specific age groups. We're going to be looking at middle to older adulthood. So we're going to start this conversation on mental health. Mind what matters. And our specific focus again is stress in middle and later adulthood, older adulthood. Next slide. So what are those issues of life at these particular stages? I wanted to approach the conversation tonight by kind of giving you a little bit of information about the middle and a later adult or older adult stages of life. So when we ask what are the issues of those two stages, I want to give you a point of reference for our conversation as it relates to what we face during middle and older adulthood. According to Erik Erikson, who identified the psychosocial stages of development, middle adulthood is from the ages of 40 years to 65 years. Older adulthood is from 65 years until the point of death. Now, Erikson believed that each stage of psychosocial development was characterized by a basic virtue, which was related to a psychosocial crisis. In middle adulthood, adults strive to create and nurture things that will outlast them, often by parenting children or fostering positive changes that benefit others. They seek to contribute to society and doing things to promote future generations. Those are some very important needs during middle adulthood stage of psychosocial development. In that particular stage, there is generativity. Now, the way I say it from this perspective is this. I say, in middle adulthood, I'm either going to see things as, I did that, or I'm going to say, I'm too old to do that, right? It's going to be one perspective or the other. When I look at my responses to what I've done in life or what I'm doing in life, I'm either going to be like, yes, yeah, or no, too late. I don't have time. I don't have the energy. I don't have the space for that in my life. Does that sound familiar to any of you? Whatever the words you use, whether you're saying, I did that, or I'm too old to do that, your thoughts are somewhere on that spectrum. Either you're going to be one end or you're going to be the other, as far as looking at your contribution to society. Now, on the other hand, in older adulthood, people tend to reflect on the life that they have lived, and they either come away with a sense of fulfillment from a life that was well lived, or a sense of regret and despair over a life misspent. Researchers. So I did a little bit of research as I was preparing for this particular topic. And I found that in 2014, Perry and others wrote that integrity versus despair, which is the psychosocial conflict, that particular stage begins as the aging adult begins to tackle the problem of his or her mortality. The onset of this stage, according to Perry, is often triggered by life events such as retirement, loss of a spouse, the loss of friends and acquaintances, facing a terminal illness, and other changes to major roles in life. So as we look at these two stages, I want you to keep those things in mind. Some of you may be in middle adulthood. Some of you may be in older adulthood. Some of you may be caring for someone in either of those particular phases of life. I want you to keep in mind the psychosocial crisis as well as the virtue that you see on this screen. Next slide, please. So when we start to think about these particular stages, we have to think about the battle of the mind. All of this is about how we are perceiving things in our minds. So the previous slide showed how you can be in a constant battle mentally and emotionally as we reflect over our lives in an attempt just to determine if the accomplishments in our lives have had meaning, or even if we still have time to do something more or to do something different. No matter what stage we're in, what we want to do is to make an impact, especially in middle adulthood. Remember that age range, that is the 40 to 65-year-olds. This type of mental and emotional pressure is not without consequence. Thinking about, what have I done? Have I done it well? Do I still have time to do it? That has an emotional consequence. It may not seem like it would, but it does. That is a lot of pressure. And as we continue this conversation, you'll understand one form of pressure, which is our focus tonight, that can cause. So with middle adulthood, just as adjusting to inevitable changes in older adulthood, such as learning the reality that maybe the retirement fund, it was not enough to actually support you fully retiring, that also holds a pressure or a consequence. Looking back at what you could have, what you should have, or what you would have to do in order to change your impact on life and those that are around you. When I think about the mental impact, a personal story comes to mind. I shared this story recently about my uncle, who was overly resilient. He was my Superman in his older adulthood until he had a stroke. The stroke in itself was not debilitating to my uncle. It was his thoughts of who he was and could no longer be at that time with having had a stroke. The stroke was my Superman's kryptonite. Being outside looking in, Michael seemed to lose a sense of who he was because of not being able to accept the realities of his life. He was overworking himself, being fully employed full-time, and being an entrepreneur. It was nothing for him to work 6 days a week and some Sunday evenings. Maybe he was trying to make his mark. Maybe he was trying to make up for decisions and choices that went awry in some earlier stages of life. Nevertheless, he succumbed to his inability to cope with life on life's terms. He decided he didn't want to fight for life anymore. He didn't want to fight for a life that he had never lived, life after stroke. He didn't know anything about that life. Maybe that life seemed to have a great deal of uncertainty for him. But the truth of the matter is, he had no real idea of what it was like not to be on the run, not to be needed by somebody all the time. That was a consequence for him, an emotional consequence. Next slide. So that leads us to the question of, what is stress? As we continue this conversation, it's important to identify what is stress. Stress, and many of us have used the phrase, I'm stressed out, or you're stressing me. This is stressing me. But stress is really a feeling of emotional and physical tension. It can come from any event or thought that makes you feel frustrated, that makes you feel angry, that makes you feel nervous. It makes you feel some kind of way. Any situation, any event, any experience can cause you to feel stress, that emotional or physical tension. Now, stress is your body's reaction to a challenge or demand. In short bursts, stress can be positive, such as when it helps you to avoid a dangerous situation, or even when it helps you to meet a deadline. I remember being in graduate school and having to write papers and feeling like this pressure, but that pressure is what it drove me. It drove me to research harder, to study harder, to write more, to make it, in a sense, quote unquote, perfect. That's what the stress did, and that's what stress can do for so many of us. But when stress lasts for a long time, it can be harmful to your health. Stress exists when there is a stress-causing factor or a stressor. Now, anxiety, I'm going to bring anxiety into this conversation. Anxiety is stress that continues well after the stressor has ended. Okay? So you have stress that is natural, drives you, causes you to do your best. And then when you continue to have that kind of stress, it can turn into anxiety. Maybe you know some, especially with young people, maybe you know some young people, or maybe you know some business owners who have faced some stress, and that stress has gotten to a point where it is a natural part of their daily life. That kind of stress leads to anxiety. Okay, so there's not a situation that you're dealing with, there's not anything at hand, but you're still feeling that physical and emotional tension. There is no stressor, there is no event, but you just feel it within yourself. Maybe some of you can identify with that. Well, there are two forms of stress. The first form, which we talked about when we were talking about kind of being driven, getting those assignments done, getting projects done, being on top of your game. That's an acute stress. Acute stress is a short-term stress that goes away quickly. You feel it when you slam on your brakes in traffic. You feel it when it looks like someone it may hit you or you've been cut off. When you have a fight or an argument with your partner or spouse. Even, now this may be just for me, even when your child jumps out of the closet in an attempt to scare you. I don't know if any of you have had that experience. That right there, it gets my heart racing. That's my physical reaction to my child jumping out of the closet, trying to scare me, right? That kind of stress, again, helps you when you are in dangerous situations. It helps you to manage those situations. It also occurs when you do something new and exciting, like buy a new house, plan your wedding, have a gathering at your home, right? Meet new people. All people at some point in time in their lives experience acute stress. Now, the other form of stress is chronic stress. Acute stress is on one end of the spectrum. Chronic stress is on the other end. Now, this type of stress, this chronic stress, lasts for a longer period of time. When you have chronic stress, your body stays on alert. Remember what I said just a moment ago? Nothing, no stressors going on, but you're still feeling it. You're still feeling like that tension. You're still feeling that emotional and physical reaction. You stay alert when you have chronic stress, when there is no danger, when there is no situation, when there are no circumstances that require your attention. You may have chronic stress if you have money problems, if you are in an unhappy relationship or an unhappy marriage, if you're experiencing trouble at work or in your family. Any type of stress that goes on for weeks or months at a time is chronic stress. It's on the other end of the spectrum of acute stress. Acute stress is short. Chronic stress lasts for months and weeks. Some people last even years at a time, which you can understand why that can be very unhealthy for you. You can become so used to chronic stress that you don't even realize it's a problem. Have you ever seen someone that's always on the go? Always worried, always getting through it, always just tense and ready to make things happen all the time. They're always on high, always on go. That may be a sign of chronic stress. If you don't find ways to manage stress, whether it is acute stress, whether it's chronic stress, but especially chronic stress, it can lead to health problems such as high blood pressure, heart disease, obesity, skin problems, headaches, lack of energy and focus. For women, it can lead to menstrual problems, or you can even have trouble just sleeping at night. And oftentimes when we are experiencing any type of stress, whether it be acute stress and especially chronic stress, we don't think about those symptoms. Now, my disclaimer tonight is, you heard in my bio, there was nothing about me being a medical doctor at all. That is my disclaimer. I am not. However, because I am a researcher, I am of the mind that when we deal with stress, oftentimes we don't realize stress is causing these medical issues and concerns. And so we just kind of go with, oh, high blood pressure is common at certain ages, in certain demographics is common. So we expect that that may be something that we are going to incur later in life, whether it is middle adulthood or later adulthood, older adulthood. We expect that to possibly be a natural course of our lives. But my statement to you tonight is this: when you're dealing with these health issues or medical crises, I want you to really think over your life and ask yourself, how much stress have you experienced? How much stress are you experiencing? Where is that stress? And that's going to be really important for you to be aware of, especially if you're going to start thinking about how to manage your stress. Okay. So keep those things in mind as we not only continue this conversation, but then also once this presentation is over, I want you guys to have that level of insight and awareness to assess, what have you experienced? How have you experienced life? Not just your own life, but the lives of those around you that may have impacted you in such a way that you have experienced chronic stress. Okay? So keep that in mind. Next slide, please. So let's get into some specifics of these two stages of psychosocial development. We're going to start with middle adulthood. Now, let me say this. What I don't want you to hear this evening is that stress only impacts individuals in middle and older adulthood. That is our primary focus tonight on those age groups. But remember what we said, the different ways that you can experience stress, those different ways are at any stage of life. Small children experience stress, right? And I want to make that a valid point this evening. Any age and stage of development can experience stress. And this is why this conversation is so important tonight, because what I want you to be able to do is walk away looking at yourselves, looking at your family members, looking at your children, your grandchildren, even great-grandchildren. I want you to look at them different, and I want you to educate them about stress and about the long-lasting impact of stress. And what I'm saying tonight is just that. The impact of lifelong stress is certainly evident when we enter into middle or older adulthood stages of life. A recent study at Penn State identified middle-aged adults as having had higher levels of stress than their counterparts in the 1990s and 2010s. This stage of development was noted as being prone to be a forgotten population, as society tends to focus on young people starting off their lives and older people dealing with the challenges of getting older. A 2020 report in the American Institute of Stress identified individuals at midlife reporting many more stressors about 19% more, which actually translates to about 64 more days of stress a year. Now, I want to note this. Middle-aged people at present and in the past have felt and feel stressed about some of the same exact things. They're stressing about their health and well-being, disruptions to their daily schedules, plans for the future, whether it's their future or the future of their children, and finances. The difference in today's middle adulters is that they feel stress more frequently. In middle adulthood, you are more or less in the middle of your own life's course. Have you guys ever thought about that? In between the ages of 40 and 65, roughly, you're in the middle of your life's course. That's why you start to reflect. That's why you start to think back on what you've done and how life has been. And, what do you want to do different? You're starting to say, okay, life, I'm at this particular stage of life. And, what else do I need to do? What else can I do? I know for me personally, I often say, I have likely lived longer than I may have left to live. Now, for some people, that may be a hard realization or even a difficult statement to even verbalize, but it is my truth. It is likely that I do not have another set of these years to live. So many middle-aged adults are still juggling, caring for the children in or out of the home, and caring for or supporting parents in need of greater levels of assistance for various reasons. And that's why this age group is a population that is sometimes forgotten, because they're caring for those that are on one end or the other, those that are younger and those that are older. And so it's just like a middle child being that forgotten child. Right? These middle agers are like that forgotten time frame or that forgotten stage of life. Now, if we think about the society that we're living in right now, at this particular time, the life of middle agers can seem like it's speeding up due to all the technological advances and the overwhelming need for us to access news and information and be on top of things, be a part of things, be privy to things, be exposed to things, right? So that can have that overwhelming need to access, which kind of like everything is always on the go. There's always on the move, always something. Right? With all the demands of middle adulthood, stress and/or anxiety tends to persist when there is a perceived or real lack of control. The uncertainties of today, tomorrow, next week, next month, next year is a breeding ground for stress and anxiety in middle adulthood. Next slide, please. So now that we have talked about the stress in middle adulthood having a lasting impact, I think it's really important that we understand if that stress that is in middle adulthood, if it is not properly managed, it will definitely carry over into older adulthood. I read this article by Dr. Tricia Pingle from May of 2021, and she identifies some long-lasting impact to stress throughout the life stages that culminate in a physical impact. Dr. Pingle said, stress when you're at the age of 65 plus can manifest in 4 specific ways. The first way was with depression and anxiety. Dr. Pingle said, when you think about stress in older adults, sometimes people have a tendency to think that depression and anxiety is an automatic when it comes to older adults. But there are a number of studies that were shown where over half of the cases of depression appear for the first time later in life. Depression is not a normal part of aging. It's not a normal experience that people have when they age. Sometimes we think that. Sometimes we feel that when our grandparents, our parents, get older, that they're going to be down for different reasons. And that may be true. That may be true because, as we said earlier, sometimes they've experienced the loss of their friends and acquaintances. Sometimes they've experienced the loss of loved ones, the loss of a spouse, significant changes in life, right? But depression is not a normal part of aging. It is common for older adults to have depression because 55% of the elderly population in Dr. Pingle's article identified that they were suffering from chronic stress. Can you imagine getting to older adulthood, 65 plus, and realizing for the first time that you have had and been experiencing chronic stress? Because you've just been going on with life, feeling like this is what life is about. Life is about pressure. Life is about getting it done. Life is about moving. Life is about challenges. Life is about all of that. Not realizing those thoughts, those feelings, those experiences are leading to chronic stress, have led you to chronic stress. Being at 65 and realizing that many, many years of your life, you have experienced chronic stress. That's why we're having this conversation tonight. Dr. Pingle went on to say that there are studies that show exactly how stress impacts the body. Now, again, my disclaimer is I'm not a medical doctor. I just do a lot of research. So what Dr. Pingle found was that our basal cortisol levels naturally increase as we age, which matters because variable and dysregulated levels of cortisol, which, if you didn't know, is the stress hormone, those dysregulated levels of cortisol are linked to low levels of serotonin, which is the happy hormone. Depression is known to be caused by low levels of serotonin, norepinephrine, which is the focus hormone, and dopamine, which is the excitement hormone. So when you consider the physiology alone, not to mention these last couple years we've had being in this COVID pandemic, it's not surprising to see increasing rates of depression in older adults due to stress, just because of what is naturally happening in the body to all these different hormones. The next thing that Dr. Pingle identified was digestive troubles. Now, stress is known to downregulate digestion. That leads to nutritional deficiencies. Poor nutritional absorption is linked to leaky gut syndrome. Though serotonin is a neurotransmitter, Dr. Pingle said that 90 to 95% of serotonin is made in the gut. Studies have shown that even any change in serotonin signaling could actually be responsible for causing IBS symptoms such as constipation and diarrhea. That's where those digestive troubles come in. Then we look at dementia. Dementia, according to Dr. Pingle, she did a study where there were 1,300 adults where it revealed that each major stressful life experience can increase the age of your brain by an astonishing 4 years. 4 years. You are not aging, but the major stressful life experience causes your brain to age by 4 years. High amounts of cortisol over a long period of time can actually deplete B vitamins. That depletion of B vitamins is known to actually cause dementia, but it also causes your hippocampus to shrink. Stress. We're talking, all of this is about stress. We're talking about these medical conditions that are related to stress. The last one that Dr. Pingle identified was diabetes. Believe it or not, one of the top effects of stress in older adults is the development of type 2 diabetes. Diabetes is so common in older adults and even younger people too, that approximately 1/3 of the elderly population has it, and 3/4 have either prediabetes or just regular diabetes. Unfortunately, it is estimated that almost half, about 45.6% of those individuals who are 65 or older are undiagnosed, leaving them at risk for more complications. Their diabetes is undiagnosed. So, how does stress come into play with all of this? Because your adrenal hormones play an important role in regulating your blood sugar levels, chronic stress can cause high blood sugar. In fact, there are numerous studies that have shown that stress can directly and indirectly cause type 2 diabetes, the latter resulting from the ability of stress to cause obesity and metabolic syndrome. There's one study that also reveals stress may more than double your risk of developing diabetes. So when I started this conversation this evening, I said that there were going to be some things that we were going to be able to identify about how stress can affect our health. This is some very significant information. I was wowed when I found this information because, again, there are some things that we think are automatic with aging. My mother also had dementia before she passed. I just thought it was something that happens to older people. But what if that dementia that she had was due to having those increased levels of stress over her lifetime? This is why it is so important that we're able to identify what causes stress. Next slide. So now that we've talked about the impact of stress, I think it is very important to learn how to manage or cope with stress. I want to define 2 words for you because I have been defining words all of my life, and it is my natural thing to define words. So I want to define the words cope and manage. One version of the definition of cope is to deal effectively with something. The definition of manage is to bring about or succeed in accomplishing despite difficulty or hardship. So the relevant questions tonight for our conversation are: 1, how can we effectively deal with stress? And 2, how can we beat stress even when it's difficult to avoid? So the first thing to do is to learn what causes you to feel stress and learn your symptoms of stress. That in part means getting to know your body and its physiological, emotional, intellectual, and behavioral responses to stress. Be aware. Once you are aware, you need to develop a toolbox of resources to assist you in de-stressing. Engage in any activity that triggers the relaxation response. Now, that is a physiological change that can help lower your blood pressure, heart rate, breathing rate, oxygen consumption, and stress hormones. You can achieve this with activities such as, I know me, one thing that I've gotten into lately has been crocheting, right? Don't judge me. Crocheting does it for me, right? But you can also engage in meditation. You can engage in guided imagery, yoga, and deep breathing exercises. Another way to manage stress is to get a good night's rest, right? What you can do is engage in a meditation exercise, journal after that meditation exercise, whatever came to mind. Take time to center yourself and reflect positively on your day. Don't beat yourself up at the end of the day. Take time and reflect positively on the day. What have you done well? How did you wow yourself that day? You can even prepare for the next day by kind of writing in your calendar or planner the things that you need to accomplish or get done for that day. Another way to manage stress is to exercise regularly. You can practice mindfulness by being engaged in the present moment, not thinking about the future. You can spend time with your pets or loved ones. I often tell people my dog is totally a blessing in my life. Laugh every day on purpose. Find humor in the day, no matter what it may seem like. I always say you have the power to create the atmosphere for your day. And like I said, I crochet. It's new for me. I just started crocheting in July. And I've made 3 blankets already. It is so relaxing to me. And these are big blankets. They're not little blankets. These are big blankets because I just get lost in it. And then I tap into that creative side. But maybe you don't crochet. You can draw, you can color, or you can find any hobby that suits you and allows you to create that relaxation response. You can also practice progressive muscle relaxation. Remember what we said earlier, the physiological response of stress is tension in your body. So progressive muscle relaxation can help you to ease the tension of those muscles when you are feeling stressed. You can take walk in nature, engaging all of your senses. What do you see? What do you smell? What do you hear? How do you feel? How does your skin feel when you're in nature? Slow down. Sometimes we just need to slow down. Stop. Remember what I said about my uncle, always running, always on the go. Sometimes we just need to simply slow down. Take breaks, eat a well-balanced diet, choose activities and engage in those activities mindfully. Build a community of people around you with similar and shared experiences. It does wonders to talk to people who understand your struggle. Extend yourself some grace and go easy on yourself. You're not perfect and you will never be able to control everything. Do what you can and leave the rest. Identify triggers to stress. Eliminate what you can. Minimize your exposure. Set boundaries as needed. My favorite statement, and I'm going to give credit to Red Wallace, was learn the art of saying no so you can own the power of your yes. Sometimes we just need to say no. There is no right or wrong way to manage stress, friends. There is no shame or disgrace in acknowledging your stress. The harm, as this presentation has attempted to demonstrate, is when you don't know your stress or you choose to overlook being stressed and its potential impact to your health. Next slide. Those are just some resources that I used to gather. I was a researcher, so it would be improper for me to have presented information and not give you where I gathered that information from. I hope this topic has been helpful to you and that you will start or even continue to have conversations identifying and managing stress at all stages of life. I always say, when you know better, do better, teach better, and live better. That concludes my presentation this evening. Thank you guys so much for your time this evening.
Dr. Cross, thank you so much for that excellent presentation. Excellent presentation. Thank you. I learned a lot. I learned a whole lot from you about stress and managing stress and what stress does to my body. I thought I knew a lot already. And I'm sure like our participants on this Zoom call, I know that they also felt like they knew a whole lot about stress and how to manage stress. But there was something that you talked about when you discussed chronic stress that I wonder if you would share a little bit more information with us. If you recognize not only that yourself is dealing with chronic stress, and you described the person who is constantly running around from one place to another, can't seem to get settled, and they're really just always going and going and going. If you recognize that a friend or a family member who is exhibiting signs of chronic stress, how should we bring it to their awareness, or should we say anything? What is the best way for a person who is not experiencing it themselves, but have a loved one or a friend who is experiencing it? What should they do to help them?
That is a great question. And I definitely would encourage you to let that person know what you're seeing. Like I said, this conversation tonight was about educating. So we want to make sure that we take this information back to our families, back into our communities. And maybe we need to just sit down with this person and say, hey, I was in this presentation, this webinar, and let me tell you what I learned. And I'm seeing these signs in you. You're always on the go. You're always running. You're always alert. You're always high in tension. You're always uptight. And I think you may be experiencing chronic stress. And educate them. That's what these conversations are all about. And this is why I love having this kind of conversation, because like I said, when you know better, you teach better, you live better, you do better. So you bring it to their attention. Now, what they choose to do with that is on them. But I believe that there will be a link to this presentation. Maybe you share the presentation with them and let them get the information firsthand for themselves. We have to spread this. So yes, definitely, to answer that question, definitely say something. We cannot continue to recognize this type of stress and just say nothing or do nothing, because the impact is far greater than it would be to have that conversation, and maybe the person don't appreciate what you're saying to them. But the lasting impact is more detrimental than the impact of that conversation with someone who didn't want to hear it.
Thank you very much for that, because that really does take me to the next question that we have. Can a person undo the physiological damage of years of chronic stress? If so, how can they undo the damage that's already been done?
So it really depends on the short answer, yes, but it really depends on what the physiological issue is. So let's say, for instance, dementia. Dementia may be one of those things that we may be stuck with that, right? But if we're able to actually catch the symptoms of dementia, you can talk with a healthcare provider that can help you as far as, managing medications, doing certain activities that can increase, the functioning of the brain and things of that nature. When it comes to things like diabetes and, the digestive issues, I believe those, I'm not a doctor, remember that's my disclaimer, but I believe those things can be reversed. I hear all the time when people say, okay, if you have type 2 diabetes, you can definitely engage in exercise. And remember, that's one of the things that we said, how can you manage stress? Exercise. How can you reduce the effects of type 2 diabetes? Exercise. Eating a balanced diet helps with stress. Eating a balanced diet helps with type 2 diabetes. Those things can definitely be reversed. That is a serious conversation for you to have with your healthcare provider. Go in and tell your healthcare provider what you learned. Say, you know what? I know I was diagnosed with type 2 diabetes, but as I look over my life, I believe I've had some chronic stress, and my diabetes may be a result of that. What can we do? What plan can we develop that we can work to bring those things into a reverse? That's a great conversation to have with your healthcare provider. Absolutely. So I want you guys to be inspired. I want you to be hopeful that these things, these physiological things, can actually change. Have those conversations with your healthcare providers.
Thank you, Dr. Cross. I do have another question that someone asked, and it has to do with the stigma related to mental health. Because of the stigma that is related to mental health, many people are reluctant to seek treatment. You mentioned that chronic stress can cause depression, and in addition to that, I think you mentioned digestive issues, dementia, and diabetes. But when you go back to, depression and anxiety, many people don't want to admit that they have a mental health issue because of the stigma associated with it. What advice would you give this audience about dealing with stigma as it relates to mental illness?
So one of the things that I say about the stigma associated with mental health is this. It's really because we're keeping the secret.
Mm.
There's a secret and we don't want to tell the secret. There's a secret we don't want people to know. We don't want to be revealed. We don't want to be exposed. What I'm going to encourage you to do today is to understand people like me, licensed mental health counselor, we are not here to judge. We are not here to say that you're crazy. We are not here to say there's something wrong with you. We are here to help you to identify resources that maybe you are not aware of, that you've never practiced, that you've never been privy to, that can help you to manage those things. Depression is reversible. Anxiety is reversible. All of those things are reversible. Sometimes what we have to be able to do is to understand why they exist. And sometimes that's a very difficult reflection to have when you have just gone on and you've told yourself that the things you've experienced in life are just natural, or that's just the way that it is, right? So secrets keep you sick. Mm-hmm. The longer you hold those things inside, the longer you tell yourself this is natural, this is normal, this is just the way that it is, you will remain sick. You have got to talk to someone. And that's the reason why I love doing what I do. As an African-American female, right? I want to ensure that our communities and all people are educated about the need to seek resources. No, we are not experts on humans. We are not experts on you. You are your own expert. But sometimes, just like any of us, we get stuck and we can't see our way through. And so you have to be willing to allow someone to help you to find your way out of that quote unquote darkness.
Thank you. That's really, really good advice. You started to share with us, or you shared a list of things that helps us to have good mental well-being. And if a person had to pick just a couple of those things that they can do very easily without, they can do it wherever they are, no matter where they are, no matter what their surroundings consist of, what would be like the top two things that you would have our community do to protect their own mental well-being?
I would say there are three things that come to mind, and I hope I'm answering this question correctly. Exercise, eat a balanced diet, and laugh.
And did you say laugh?
Laugh.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Laugh. Because think about it, when you have an experience, let's say your child comes in and they're not doing well in school. You want them to do well because you know what that means. That's stressful for you. You're like, oh my God, this kid isn't going to get it. Oh, I'm going to have to do this. Now I got to talk to the teachers. I'm just going to say, just laugh. Laugh with little Johnny, laugh with little Susan. Say, so you seriously got a 65 on your test. Are you serious right now? Man, I know you do better than that. Okay, all right, well, we got to figure it out. Just take things lightly. Because like I said in the presentation, you can't control everything. So you're putting all this energy into something that you can't control. Because at the end of the day, little Johnny is going to do what little Johnny does. Mm-hmm. You can't control it. You can't make the child, you can't make anything happen, but you can inspire. Mm-hmm. And so if I'm going to inspire someone, I got to come with the right attitude, the right spirit, so that they don't feel, downgraded or pounded on. Mm-hmm. Laughter can create that atmosphere. I know it sounds a little different, but I challenge you, when you're facing something, laugh intentionally from your gut. Laugh.
This is all good advice. See, that just goes to show that you're not just an excellent mental health counselor, you also are an excellent educator. And we so appreciate this session that you've done for us this evening. Really do appreciate you being here for the community. And right now, I am going to turn it back over to Zavanya Covington, who serves as our faith-based partnership coordinator. Zavanya?
Hello again. Thank you so much, Dr. Ty, for such an informative presentation. I have learned quite a bit myself, and I'm in that category where my kids are very young adults, and I'm also taking care of my parents. I'm a new caretaker to my own parents, and so I've just learned so much in tonight's session that I'm definitely going to take with me, and I'm going to probably review this session again myself over and over again. So thank you so much for everything that you shared with us tonight. So before we go, I did want to share a few brief closing announcements. So there will be some takeaway information that will be emailed to all of the registrants tomorrow. I will be definitely sharing the resources that Dr. Ty did include in her presentation. Also, I've posted a link to a very brief survey for tonight's session. So if you can, please take a moment to complete that. We really, really do value your feedback, and we do definitely take that into consideration as we plan these sessions. Also, next month is Breast Cancer Awareness Month, and so we're going to have Ms. Angela Mays back with us for our October session to discuss breast cancer awareness. So please be on the lookout for that invitation as well. And also take a look at the future sessions we have for the remainder of the year for lung cancer, November 17th, and then also caregiver self-care for our December session. And then I would like to turn it back over to Lynn to share some really exciting news that the Social Responsibility Department, along with Baptist Health, will be offering to our teens, our high school students. So Lynn.
Hello again. Everyone, I am thrilled to share with you this opportunity that you all can share with all the high school students that exist in your life. There will be a very special first time inaugural healthcare career conference that Baptist Health is putting on. It will be held on October the 8th at the Prime Osborne. And we will have the students who participate will have the opportunity to engage in all 5 of the healthcare pathways, whether it's clinical care or administrative care or health informatics, support services, those things that make the hospital move and allow people who work at the bedside to care for patients, those therapeutic services like physical therapy and occupational therapy, diagnostic services such as imaging, x-rays, all of those things, in laboratory, all of those things that help physicians diagnose patients the right way. And then they'll have a chance also to talk to folks who are working in that biotechnology area, research and development. These are our people who are actually our pharmacists and the folks who are working in research. And so we are really, really excited about this. This is the first ever. And we are expecting about 300 students to participate in this event. And when our students come, they will receive all kinds of goodies. They'll have an opportunity, if they register before September 30, they have a chance to win a free iPad, or to win an iPad that is just for them at absolutely free, no cost to that. And then also they can earn 8 hours of volunteer service for school. And, I think many of them have to have 100 hours. This is an opportunity for them to earn 8 of those hours just by getting this wonderful opportunity. We have a panel of physicians who is going to share their story with them about how they became doctors, and then the and just all of the things that involves. And we're going to hear from our very own Dr. Gruber, who is going to do our welcome address for students. And Dr. Gruber is a wonderful physician here at Baptist Health He's our Chief Medical Officer, and he was born and raised here in Jacksonville, and he himself has a wonderful story to share. So we invite you to invite any teenager that you know that is in the 9th grade through the 12th grade to register for this program. When Zavanya sends out the information, she's going to add a link to this conference so that you can have the teenagers in your life register for it. And it's not just for those who think they want to work in clinical care. It's for anyone who maybe they're on the fence. They're not quite sure that they want to work in healthcare at all, but this will give them an opportunity to make a good choice, a good decision about what they would like to do in the area of healthcare or not. So we invite you to invite them, and it is our first time, and we're hoping that this will be something that young people would like to see on an annual basis. So thank you very much. Thanks about Zavanya for giving me an opportunity to share this with our audience this evening.
Yeah, thank you so much, Lynn. This is great. I'm really looking forward to coming in and assisting with this. So again, I will be sharing the flyer as well as the link. We ask that you please share this. Please print it out if you want to, share it with your communities, with your churches, so we really want to make this a great success for our kids. So that ends tonight's session. Thank you so much again for joining us. We hope to see you next month for our session about breast cancer. So have a good evening, everyone.